Fast Market, everyone. Kevin Hinks and Alex Coffey here now for our cash tag segment. We want to bring in the co-founder of LikeFolio.com, Mr. Andy Swan, to the show. Andy, let's talk vacations. Let's talk Airbnb. What do you got for us? Is this company now, these companies are going through a big transition. I mean, they were extremely popular. And then people started worrying about the fees. And then people worried about how many homes they could get and line up. And they're worried about inventory. Now what is the problem, Andy? Because travel is the stickiest, strongest part of this economy.
Yeah, travel's working out well. When we look at the consumer macro trends for travel in general, it looks pretty positive. People traveling for work up a significant amount. Now, traveling for leisure and sort of the vacation travel up just a little bit and actually falling off here recently. So not as impressive as what we're seeing on the work travel side of things. But really the Airbnb story, I think, is really how hotels have responded, how the consumer has responded. For a long time, Airbnb, VRBO, these kind of rent someone else's homes was kind of a novelty. It was a really cool thing to do. It got you unstuck from the normal hotel grind. But now, the consumer is really starting to push back against, like you mentioned, a lot of the fees, a lot of the hassle, the to-do list that sometimes comes with renting an Airbnb. And when we look at these plotted against each other in the LikeFolio outlier grid, we really see Airbnb in that kind of deadly spot, kind of at the bottom left of all of its competitors, with Hyatt, Hilton, Marriott, all at the top right, where that means those hotel chains are growing in consumer demand faster than Airbnb, and more importantly, I think their customers are significantly happier than Airbnb customers. And so a really mixed bag here, I think, for Airbnb. I think they're starting to lose to the competition for the first time in a long time. And it will be interesting when they get on the conference call how much they address this, because I really do think that the consumer is wide open right now in terms of, it's not necessarily an Airbnb every time. It's not necessarily a hotel every time. We've actually got competition between the two. And right now I'd say the hotel chains are winning.
I think that is starting to make a little bit of sense too, Andy, as the cost of this has gone up. Kind of like Uber and taxi cabs, there used to be that huge price disparity. Now you don't see that as much anymore, and that's helped the traditional taxi cab a little bit. But that disruption happened, and the way that we hail rides now is completely revolutionized from a company like Uber. The same could be said for this space as well. I think that Airbnb did a lot to revolutionize the kind of choices we have, particularly in the leisure space. But like Southwest Airlines, I would anticipate that Airbnb is far more exposed to leisure than it is to corporate work travel. The few corporate kind of travel stays that are staying, I'm sure, skews to the smaller, medium-sized businesses. Big, large corporations have long-standing relationships with these hotel brands. So using those two names as sort of comparisons, all these things that had benefited them over the last few years are now sort of headwinds going forward. How does that set up then for Airbnb? As it still really meets a market, it's just the growth in this space right now isn't its niche.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that the growth slowdown really is the story here. That you nailed it. They disrupted. They benefited from that immensely. You have to give the founders of this company incredible credit. I was talking to a venture capitalist that passed on Airbnb, 10 or 12 or 15 years ago or whatever it was. They passed on it because they couldn't wrap their mind around someone wanting to stay in someone else's home or someone wanting to let strangers stay in their home. It had that connotation at the beginning. And then now it's become to the point that, Airbnbs are just, micro versions of hotel chains where a lot of people are owning, 10, 20, 50 units as an LLC and turning it into a more complete business that way. So I think it's kind of come full circle. It makes sense that they're starting to be, a competitor with hotel chains and a comparable. And I think that doesn't work in Airbnb's favor for the next zero, or for the next 1 to 5 years the way it did the first 10 years.
And if I'm looking at this from a common sense perspective, this asset light middleman business model that Airbnb has, it's gotta be an easy way. And this company, even though it's still growing, is already profitable. It's got a positive PE, so it's not like this is one of those like we just talked about with Roblox, right? So this is a company, I've had a good experience on Airbnb, that except when I try to call room service, there's a little bit of an issue there with room service, and I do like a good hotel, a lobby bar in my life. But besides that, these companies, if you're going with a group of people, if you're going, for some privacy, this works. And the fees are an issue. And it is a little more expensive, but they also have some big positives with this company.
Yeah, they definitely do. And, when it comes to international travel, I think they have a big advantage because people want to experience a little bit more the lifestyle that they're getting into. It's not just a bed and a bar, in your case, Kevin, but the way that they are growing, I think is just not enough for Wall Street at this point. And that's the real key. I think this is a great company. They execute really well. Love the light, low touch business model. They've got control over a ton of assets without actually having to own them, which I think is fantastic. But the growth rate just seems to be slowing, and Wall Street never really likes that, especially when they've gotten used to pricing a company at sort of fantasy growth rate valuations way out into the future. When reality starts to slow down, it can take a large bite out of a stock like this.
Andy, last thing, when you're looking at this particular company, you mentioned VRBO, I believe it is, which I think is under the Expedia umbrella.
Expedia, yes.
How have new competitors come in here? Is Airbnb still, 80-20, or I'm just throwing out numbers here? Is it still the biggest player by a long mile? Or some of these smaller competitors starting to become a bigger issue in this particular space? I know we compare them to hotels, but there's other players doing the exact same thing they're doing.
Yeah, there's other players, there's other aggregators. I think that VRBO getting, sort of in bed with Expedia was a real competitive challenge for Airbnb. I think it continues to be and will continue to be. And then, how much does it take for the next player to come in that's well backed and ready to go down this path? Once you've gotten the consumer used to doing this, that was really the hard part. And Airbnb kind of did that for everyone and everyone that may come behind them. So they've got a lead right now, but replicating their business model for someone like an Expedia via VRBO, or even a Google or any of the other travel sites, not that difficult to do. So I think that's another factor that could weigh on profit margins and growth in the future.
Andy Swan, co-founder of LikeFolio.com. Thanks for coming on. As always, great data, great conversation. Have a great day, Andy.
Thanks, you too.
All right, Alex.